Wind dragged the dust down Main Street like it had a job to do, shoving grit under doors and into the eyes of anyone foolish enough to stand still. The piano inside the Lazy Spur was playing something slow and sour, the notes bending like they were too tired to stay straight. That's when the saloon door slammed open. Not the usual swing and creak, slammed hard enough to rattle the glasses. She filled the doorway like a storm cloud rolling in, tall as any man in town and broader across the shoulders than the barkeep. Black dress, black gloves, black veil. Even her boots were black, but the heels struck the boards like silver hammers. No one said her name, but every head turned. She didn't look left or right. She walked straight to the bar, each step hitting the floorboards in a rhythm you could measure a heartbeat against. The barkeep poured without asking, hands shaking just enough to make the whiskey slosh. Outside, a thin cowboy was pulling the saddle off a horse that had seen better years. The animal favored its front leg, head down like it knew the road ahead wouldn't be any kinder than the one behind. The man's hat brim hid most of his face, but the sun caught on the lines around his mouth, not the kind made by laughter. "You there?" Her voice cut through the open door, low but sharp enough to reach him over the wind. He looked up, blinking against the light. "Inside," she said, "not a request." The cowboy hesitated, glanced at his horse, then tied the reins to a hitch post that wobbled like it might give up in the next breeze. When he stepped through the doors, the piano stopped altogether. She was still at the bar, one hand on the glass, the other resting on her hip like she might draw a pistol if she got bored waiting. Her eyes, clear and gray, swept over him like a measuring tape. "You're Eli Mercer," she said. His brow creased. "Who's his skin? I'm telling." She tipped her chin toward the stool beside her. "Sit." Eli stayed standing. "I'm on the market for trouble, ma'am." "Good," she said, "because trouble's already bought and paid for. I need a husband, and you need sturdy daughter." The room didn't breathe for a moment. Even the barkeep leaned an inch closer, like maybe he'd misheard. Eli's jaw worked. "Beg your pardon?" "You heard me." She drained the glass in a single swallow, set it down with a dull thud. "You got a lean look. A man who's had his share of running. My ranch don't abide men who run. But I've got land that needs defending and a daughter who'll not marry a coward. Seems you need a place, and I need a man who won't break when the wind changes." Eli's gaze flicked toward the door. "You don't know me. I know enough." She slid a silver coin across the bar, its edge catching the light. "And I know Dawson Creed's men been sniffing around your trail same as they've been sniffing around my fences. That makes us neighbors, whether we like it or not." The piano player cleared his throat and began again, softer this time. Outside, the wind kicked harder, setting the sign out front to squealing on its rusted chain. Eli took the stool, slow, like sitting meant he'd just signed a paper he hadn't read. "Suppose I say no? Then you ride on," she said, "and Creed finds you alone. I don't take bets on men who choose the losing side." He studied her face, searching for some crack in that wall of iron she wore. There wasn't one. The barkeep set down another glass, this one for Eli. He didn't touch it. "What's your name?" he asked finally. Her mouth tightened, not with anger, but with the memory of saying it too many times to men who didn't last. "Folks call me the Giant Widow. You can call me Widow Vale." Eli let out a slow breath. "And your daughter?" Her eyes narrowed, just slightly. "May. She's 16. Works harder than any ranch hand I ever hired. Can shoot straighter, too. She don't take kindly to drifters, or to anyone who thinks her mother can't keep her land." Eli gave a half-smile that didn't reach his eyes. "And this bargain? What's it buy me besides trouble?" "A roof, a meal, and a place where the ground don't move under your feet every time the wind blows. That's more than most men get." She stood, her shadow stretching long in the slanting light. "Sundown. Be at the ranch if you've got the spine for it." She didn't wait for an answer. Her boots struck the floor in that same hammer rhythm as she crossed the room, swung open the doors, and stepped into the glare. Eli sat there a moment, staring at the untouched whiskey. Then he reached for it, took a swallow, and let the burn remind him he was still breathing. Somewhere beyond the saloon walls, a horse snorted. Somewhere farther, the low echo of hooves carried on the wind. The barkeep leaned close, voice a rasp. You think of going, Mercer? Eli didn't look at him. I reckon I'm thinking the thinking's already done. He set the glass down, pushed back from a bar, and followed the widow's shadow out into the dust. The hammer rang against the fence post, each strike echoing off the dry hills like a shot. Eli's palms were raw, the grain of the wood biting into his skin as he steadied it. May stood 10 paces off, rifle resting against her hip, eyes on the horizon instead of the work. Tracks again, she said without turning. Eli paused, lifted his head. The morning sun bled red through a thin bank of clouds, throwing long shadows over the pasture. Sure enough, just beyond the far gate, fresh hoofprints pressed deep into the soft earth where the dew still clung. That makes 3 nights running, she added, voice flat. The widow came up behind them, coat snapping in the wind. She studied the prints for a long moment, then shifted her gaze to the ridge. They're watching us. Just don't want us to see him do it. A crow cut across the sky, its shadow sliding over the dust. Eli drove the last nail home and set the hammer down. Fences don't cut themselves. No, the widow said, and neither do men who ain't warned. They moved back toward the barn, May trailing behind, still scanning the far hills. Inside, the air was warm and close with the scent of hay and horse sweat. Eli's mount shifted in its stall, favoring its bad leg. May's mare stamped and snorted like she caught the same scent May had. By noon, the work had turned to mending a busted water trough. The sun burned down hard enough to make the boards creak. Eli squinted against the glare, his shirt sticking to his back, while the widow worked beside him, hands steady as stone. It was then the shout came from a west pasture. One of the hands, a kid barely 20, running hard and waving his hat. Fences down. 3 had gone. May was already moving before he finished, swinging into her saddle and kicking up a trail of dust toward the break. Eli grabbed his own reins and followed, the widow close behind. They found a gap torn wide, posts splintered like matchsticks. The tracks leading away were deep and clear, at least 4 horses moving fast. May swung down, crouched over the sign. Not ours. Shoes are new. Eli scanned the open land ahead, the heat shimmer making the horizon dance. They're not far. The widow's voice was calm but cold. We don't chase. Not yet. May looked up sharply. We just let him take what's ours. For now, the widow said. Cattle can be replaced. Men can't. She turned her gaze to Eli, her eyes narrowing. You know what's coming. He met her stare without flinching. Yeah, I do. That night, the wind shifted. The lantern light in the kitchen threw their shadows long across the walls. Over stew and coffee, the widow spoke without looking at either of them. Creed's pushing, testing us. He'll come closer next time. May set her spoon down. Then we should be ready. Eli leaned back in his chair, listening to the night outside, the restless creak of the barn, the low call of a coyote somewhere beyond the creek. We'll be ready, he said. But even as he spoke, he caught the faintest sound over the wind, the steady, deliberate clop of a single horse somewhere out in the dark, keeping its distance but not turning away. The first light of dawn caught on rifle barrels along the ridge. 15 of them, maybe more, black shapes against the pale sky. They didn't move, didn't call out, just sat there horses like vultures waiting for something to die. Eli stood in the yard, coffee in hand, watching the sun slide higher. The widow stepped out onto the porch beside him, shotgun resting in the crook of her arm. May was already at the corral, checking the saddles, her braids swinging with quick, hard movements. From the ridge, one rider broke away, tall in the saddle, black hat pulled low, horse dark as coal. He came down slow, dust curling at his heels, until he stopped just short of the gate. Vale, he called, voice deep enough to carry without a shout. The widow didn't answer. You know why I'm here. She lifted the shotgun, resting its barrel against her shoulder. I know you're wasting my morning. The man's mouth twisted. Sundown. That's how long you've got to clear out. You're sitting on what's mine. You mistake my land for something you can own, she said. His eyes slid to Eli. And you don't think I forgot what you took from me back in Laredo. Eli didn't blink. Wasn't yours to keep. Creed's smirk was slow and sharp. Then he turned, riding back up to his men without another word. By the time he reached the ridge, the widow was already speaking. We start with the windows. Board 'em high. Water barrels by the doors. May, fetch the long guns. Eli, I'll handle the barn, he said. They worked through the heat, the sound of hammers and saws carrying into the empty fields. By afternoon, the house looked less like a home and more like a fort. The smell of cut pine and dust hung heavy in the air. In the barn, Eli checked the rifles, laying them out in a neat row. His saddlebag lay open on the workbench, metals glinting in the dim light beside an old cavalry saber. May came in quiet, her shadow falling over the table. You fought, she said. Not a question. Eli kept his eyes on the rifle he was cleaning. A long time ago. She glanced at the medals. You're not just a drifter. He looked up then, meeting her stare. Don't go spreading it. Outside, a shot cracked, distant, but close enough to make the horses start. They ran to the porch. One of the widow's steers lay in the far pasture, blood spreading dark into the dirt. Eli raised the rifle to his shoulder, sighting along the ridge. A rider moved just enough to show his position. Eli's shot dropped him clean from the saddle. The rest pulled back into the rocks, dust rising where they'd been. May's voice was tight. You just made him mad. Eli lowered the rifle. Good. The widow didn't smile, but there was something in her eyes, a glint that hadn't been there that morning. The wind shifted, carrying the faint sound of a harmonica from somewhere beyond the ridge. It was a tune meant for passing time, not for comfort. Night would be here soon, and with it, the fight. The first torch hit the barn roof before the moon cleared the clouds. Eli was already moving, shouting orders over the crackle of fire. May, north window. Widow, take the south fence. Gunfire split the night, sharp and flat against the wind. May's rifle barked twice, dropping shadows in the dirt. The widow's shotgun roared, the sound punching through the dark like a cannon. Smoke rolled low across the yard, stinging eyes, turning the air thick and hot. Horses screamed in the corral, hooves hammering the boards. Eli kicked the barn door open, cutting the ropes with one swift sweep of his saber, driving the animals into the open. A bullet hissed past his ear. He dove behind a water barrel, slammed another round into the chamber, and sent it back toward the flash that had fired it. The man crumpled without a sound. Left flank. May's voice cut sharp through the chaos. Eli swung that way, spotting 3 riders breaking from the ridge. He waited until they were in range, then fired. 1, 2, 3. 2 fell. The third wheeled off, vanishing into the smoke. The widow moved like a shadow through the burning light, black dress snapping in the wind, veil torn away, face hard as stone. Every shot she fired found its mark. A man lunged at her from behind the corral. She swung the shotgun stock into his jaw, dropped him, and finished it with a single pull of the trigger. Creed's voice rose over the din. Mercer, show yourself. Eli stepped into the open, rifle in hand. I'm right here. Creed charged, firing wild. The 2 men collided in the dust. Rifle knocked from Eli's grip. They hit the ground hard, rolling through grit and blood. Creed's knife flashed. Eli caught his wrist, muscles straining, the blade inching closer. With a heave, Eli twisted, slamming Creed's arm into the dirt. The knife fell, but Creed came back swinging, fist splitting Eli's lip. Eli answered with a headbutt that stunned them both. They rose together, breathing hard. Creed drew, but Eli was faster, boot to the chest, sending the gun spinning. He leveled his own pistol, jaw tight. Walk away, Eli said. Creed spat blood. Not a chance. The report of the shotgun was deafening. Creed jerked, eyes wide, and dropped. The widow lowered the barrel, smoke drifting from its mouth. Eli looked at her. She didn't speak. Didn't need to. By dawn, the fire was out. Bodies lay still in the pale light. The survivors scattered back into the hills. May stood in the yard, rifle resting against her shoulder, eyes fixed on the empty ridge. The widow stepped past Eli, gaze on the horizon. Town will hear about this by noon. They'll make a story, Eli said. She gave the faintest smile. It already is. The old storyteller's voice comes low, almost a whisper now. And so it's told, the widow didn't just find herself a husband. She found the only man stubborn enough to stand when the wind turned mean. Some say they kept that ranch till the dust itself forgot their names. Others say they're still out there, riding the line at sundown. The fire pops. The wind shifts. The tale is done.